The night was cold, the kind that bites through old coats and empty stomachs. Marcus sat beneath the flickering streetlight on Fifth Avenue, his back against the crumbling wall of an abandoned diner. A half-empty coffee cup sat beside him, the only thing between him and complete invisibility. To most, Marcus was just another homeless man, forgotten, unimportant, a shadow in a city too busy to care. But fate was watching that night, ready to turn his story into something no one would ever forget. Across the street, the rumble of motorcycles shattered the stillness. A group of bikers, rough-looking men wearing the infamous Hell's Angels patches, parked near the diner. They laughed loudly, the sound echoing down the street. But not everyone in the group was laughing. One man, a towering figure with tattoos creeping up his neck, stumbled toward the alley, his hand pressed against his chest. His name was Duke, a legend among bikers, known for his strength and leadership. But tonight, he looked weak, pale, and desperate. Marcus watched as Duke collapsed near a trash bin, gasping for air. Without a second thought, Marcus sprang into action. He'd been an EMT years ago before life tore everything away, his home, his job, his family. Instinct took over. He ran to Duke, checked his pulse, and realized the man was going into cardiac arrest. Marcus tore off his worn gloves and started CPR, counting compressions with trembling hands. "Come on, man, stay with me," he shouted, his breath turning to fog in the cold night. The other bikers rushed over, shouting, confused, ready to shove Marcus away. But when they saw what he was doing, their anger turned to fear. Minutes felt like hours, but finally, Duke coughed, drawing in a ragged breath. Marcus sighed in relief. The sound of sirens grew louder. Someone had called an ambulance. When the paramedics arrived, they pushed Marcus aside, but one of them recognized him. "Marcus, you used to be with Station 12, right?" Marcus just nodded quietly and walked back to his spot under the streetlight. He didn't wait for thanks. The next morning, Marcus woke up to the thunder of engines. Dozens, no, hundreds, of bikes lined the street. The same Hell's Angels, but more of them now. Duke stood in front, wearing his leather vest, a big bandage across his chest, and a look of deep gratitude on his face. "You," Duke said, his voice echoing, "you saved my life last night. We found out who you are. You used to save lives for a living, then life kicked you down." "Not anymore." Marcus didn't understand at first. The bikers got off their motorcycles and began unloading wood, nails, paint, and tools from trucks that had followed them. "We're rebuilding your house," Duke said. Marcus blinked, confused. "House? I don't have one." Duke smiled. "You do now." For the next few days, the quiet street turned into a construction zone. Bikers who were once feared now hammered nails, painted walls, and built a small but beautiful house from scratch. They worked through the night, laughing, sweating, and refusing to take a single dollar from anyone. Marcus tried to help, but Duke wouldn't let him lift a finger. "You've done enough," he said. "You gave me a second chance. Let us give you yours." The news spread fast. Reporters came, people donated food and supplies, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt seen. He stood in front of his new home, tears filling his eyes. It wasn't just a house, it was proof that kindness still existed in a world that had forgotten what it meant. When the last nail was hammered in, Duke handed Marcus a set of keys. "You saved me when I was at my lowest," Duke said. "Now we'll make sure you're never alone again." The crowd cheered, engines roared, and Marcus couldn't stop crying. That night, under the warm light of his own porch, Marcus sat with Duke and the bikers, sharing stories over coffee and laughter. He realized that sometimes, the people the world fears are the ones with the biggest hearts. And sometimes, the people the world forgets are the ones destined to change it. The story of the homeless man and the bikers spread far beyond that town, a symbol of redemption, brotherhood, and the power of compassion. Marcus's new home became more than a shelter, it became a place where others in need could find warmth, food, and hope. And every time Duke visited, he'd pat Marcus on the back and say, "You didn't just save my life, brother. You reminded me what it means to live." The night that began with despair ended in light, and Marcus finally understood, even when the world turns its back on you, one act of kindness can rebuild everything you've lost, brick by brick, heart by heart. Weeks passed, and the small house on Fifth Avenue became a beacon in the neighborhood. What had once been a forgotten corner of the city now drew crowds every evening, people dropping by to meet the man whose kindness had changed an entire biker brotherhood. Marcus had grown used to waking up not to sirens or cold winds, but to the laughter of strangers and the roar of engines coming by just to check on him. He still couldn't quite believe it. Every morning, Duke stopped by on his black Harley, parking in front of the porch. He'd bring breakfast, hot coffee, biscuits, sometimes pancakes, and the two men would sit quietly, watching the sunrise. "You ever think life could turn around like this?" Duke asked one morning, lighting a cigarette. Marcus chuckled softly. "I stopped thinking life could turn around years ago," he said. "But maybe, sometimes life just waits for the right moment to remind you you're still worth something." Duke nodded slowly. "You're more than worth something, brother. You're family now." But not everyone saw it that way. Some locals still looked at Marcus with suspicion. To them, he was still a homeless man, a drifter who'd gotten lucky. They didn't understand what he'd been through, how he'd lost his job after the accident that killed his wife and daughter, how the pain had driven him to the streets. When a local reporter wrote a story titled, "From Homeless to Hero, the Man Who Saved the Biker King," it brought attention, but also stirred jealousy. A few city officials didn't like that a group of bikers had taken over a public street to build a house without permission. One afternoon, while Marcus was planting flowers outside his new home, a black SUV pulled up. Two city inspectors stepped out, holding clipboards. "Mr. Grant," one asked coldly, "we've received complaints about an unauthorized structure built on city property. Technically, this lot belongs to the city." Marcus froze. "What do you mean? This was just an empty space for years." "Yes, but it's not zoned for residential use," the inspector replied. "We're issuing a notice. You may have to vacate until this is sorted out." Duke arrived just in time to hear the end of the conversation. His face darkened. "Vacate," he said, stepping forward. "This man built hope out here. You think we're gonna let you take it away?" The inspectors glanced nervously at the row of Harleys lined up across the street. "Sir, this isn't a threat situation." "No," Duke interrupted calmly, "it's a promise. We'll handle this the right way." That night, the Angels held a meeting at their clubhouse. Bikers from all over the state came, some driving hundreds of miles just to stand by Marcus. They decided to do it legally. They pulled money, hired a lawyer, and filed for the property to be transferred under Marcus's name. It wasn't easy. The city pushed back, media attention grew, and people online began arguing about whether a homeless man deserved to keep a house built illegally. Through it all, Marcus stayed humble. "I don't care about walls or roofs," he told a news reporter. "I just want to keep helping people like me, the ones nobody sees." And he did. Every evening, he cooked soup for the hungry, shared blankets with the cold, and spoke gently to those who'd lost their way. The house became known as the Brotherhood home. It was no longer just Marcus's. It belonged to everyone who needed hope. A month later, Duke walked into a city council meeting wearing his vest and chains, followed by nearly 300 bikers. The room fell silent. "You want to talk about laws and land?" Duke said, his voice deep and steady, but this man followed a law greater than any written, compassion. He saved a life when nobody would even look at us. And now we're here to make sure he keeps his. By the end of that meeting, the council had no choice but to agree. The lot was transferred legally to Marcus. The mayor even shook his hand for the cameras. When the news broke, people cheered. Marcus stood outside his house that night, staring at the glowing porch light, his heart heavy with gratitude. "You fought for me, Duke," he said softly. Duke smiled. "You fought for me first, brother. You showed me that not all heroes wear badges, some just carry scars." Marcus looked at the stars above, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, peace. But deep down, he knew his journey wasn't over. He had been given a gift, not just a home, but a second chance to live with purpose. And from that moment, Marcus made a vow: he would spend the rest of his life giving back, helping every forgotten soul find light again. The next chapter of his life was only beginning, and it would inspire a movement far greater than anyone imagined. Months rolled by, and the Brotherhood home had become a living miracle. What began as a single act of compassion had transformed into a community of hope. Every day, men and women from different walks of life, homeless veterans, single mothers, lost teenagers, even former bikers trying to rebuild, came to the little house on Fifth Avenue. Marcus greeted each one with the same smile, the same words: "You're home now." The once empty street was now filled with laughter, music, and the sound of people rebuilding not just walls, but lives. Duke had kept his promise. Every weekend, hundreds of Hell's Angels rode in from nearby towns, bringing supplies, food, blankets, clothes, even furniture. They called themselves the Brotherhood Riders now, turning their notorious reputation into something pure, something powerful. "We used to ride for pride," Duke said one day while helping Marcus fix the fence, "but now we ride for purpose." Still, not everything was easy. The growing attention drew both supporters and critics. Some people accused Marcus of using his story for fame, though he'd never taken a cent from donations. Others questioned the biker's motives, claiming it was a publicity stunt. The media, always hungry for drama, twisted parts of the story. One news outlet even ran a headline: "Ex-homeless man turns biker haven into chaos zone." It broke Marcus's heart to see something built on love being dragged through the mud. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Marcus sat on his porch alone, his thoughts heavy. Duke arrived and sat beside him, noticing the silence. "You're thinking about what they said on the news?" Marcus sighed. "Yeah, I just wanted to help. But now it feels like they're trying to destroy it." Duke looked out at the street, where a few kids were playing near the bikes. "Let them talk," he said finally. "We know the truth, and truth doesn't need defending, it just needs living." But things took a darker turn a week later. Someone broke into the Brotherhood home during the night. The pantry was looted, the donation boxes emptied, and the walls vandalized with cruel words. The community woke to the sight of destruction and hate painted across the very walls that had sheltered them. Marcus fell to his knees in disbelief. The pain wasn't just about the damage, it was about what it represented, that some people still couldn't stand to see compassion thrive. When Duke heard the news, he was furious. "Whoever did this," he growled, "picked the wrong man to mess with." But Marcus stopped him. "No, Duke, we can't fight hate with hate. If we do, we lose everything we've built." Instead of revenge, Marcus gathered everyone, bikers, neighbors, even the homeless, from across the city. "They tried to break us," he said, his voice trembling but strong. "So let's rebuild again, but this time, not for me, for everyone who's ever been knocked down." Within hours, the lot was alive with people. The bikers repainted the walls, the children planted flowers, and Marcus helped repair the broken doors. The community came together stronger than before. Even strangers who had only heard of the story online showed up to help, bringing donations, paint, and tools. A woman in tears hugged Marcus and whispered, "My son was homeless once. What you're doing here, it matters more than you know." That night, as lanterns lit the newly restored walls, Duke handed Marcus a framed photo. It was a picture of the first day they met, the night Duke had collapsed, and Marcus had saved his life. On the frame, Duke had engraved words that read, "One heart can start a brotherhood." Marcus felt tears well in his eyes. "You didn't have to do all this," he said softly. Duke grinned. You didn't have to save me either. But you did. Now we keep riding, keep building, keep proving that mercy is stronger than misery. The following week, something extraordinary happened. A national news network arrived, this time to tell the real story. Cameras captured the rebuilt Brotherhood home, the volunteers, the bikers, and Marcus, standing in front of the house that had once been a symbol of brokenness, now shining with light. When the broadcast aired, millions watched. Donations poured in from across the country. People sent letters, messages, and even offers to open similar homes in other states. Marcus stood in front of his porch the next morning as the mail truck dropped off dozens of envelopes. He looked around, at the home, at the children laughing, at the bikers who had become his family, and felt a warmth deep in his chest. Duke pulled up beside him, grinning. What's next, brother? Marcus looked out toward the horizon. We build another one, he said. And then another, until no one has to sleep alone on the street again. As the engines roared to life, the air filled with hope and thunder. The Brotherhood riders took off down the highway, their vests gleaming under the sun, carrying a message the world would never forget, that redemption is real, brotherhood is powerful, and compassion can turn even the darkest corner into a home. For Marcus, it was never about the house anymore. It was about the hearts that filled it, and the reminder that no matter how far you've fallen, a single act of kindness can lift the world back to its feet.